what a difference a day makes. 5 o'clock last night, and the Prime Minister was giving interviews. We now know that she rather likes monosyllabic, clipped replies. She was being asked if she'd restore the 45p rate, and she just said no, firmly, silence either side of the word, as we know we're learning she rather likes doing. But that didn't last. As you say, this morning we had the Chancellor coming on the radio and saying, we listened. And what Tory MPs are saying is, well, you're going to have to do a lot more of that, because we haven't necessarily stopped. This isn't the end of it. There are other bits of your plan that we don't like either. It could be, if you are cooking it up, it could be what you're planning to do to benefits. You're not going to raise them as much as we would like. We don't know exactly what they're going to do with uplifting, but the MPs are keeping an eye on that. They might want the Office for Budget Responsibility report to come out earlier than the government wants. They might want to stop certain types of cuts. They might not be happy with the planning changes. The whole envelope of ideas that Liz Truss had, Tory MPs are saying, well, actually, we now have the power to stop you doing it. You no longer govern. They're using very strong language indeed. They may not win that battle of strength. Liz Truss's friends are trying to say they can fight back against that, but it is, I can't remember seeing the shine come off a new government as quickly as happened here. As the Chancellor himself said, what a day. Is there a big question mark next to your judgment now, Chancellor?
The Chancellor pursued by a media mob. Not a good look for a conference supposed to be showcasing a brand new administration. But only 10 days after Kwasi Kwarteng announced the abolition of the 45p rate as one of the crowning glories of his budget, he was backing down and keeping the top rate after all.
This is a humiliation, Chancellor.
It was the wrong thing to do. I think we've got to try and listen. I think people in government have to listen to voters, have to listen to people in the country. And it's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to put your hand up and say, actually, this isn't the right thing to do now.
Strong suggestions that he had to persuade her that the climb down had to happen. Liz Truss was in the hall for the Chancellor's speech, meant to be an outline of their bold plan. Now, a seriously dented one.
What a day. It has been tough, but we need to focus on the job in hand. We need to move forward. No more distractions. We have a plan, and we need to get on and deliver it. That's what the public expect. That's what the public expects from the government. But I can be frank. I know the plan put forward only 10 days ago has caused a little turbulence. I get it. We are listening and have listened. And now I want to focus on delivering the major parts of our growth package.
The Chancellor attacked Labour and Tory predecessors for setting the country on a path of economic decline. No olive branch to internal critics. Circling the conference fringe, heavyweight former supporters of Rishi Sunak. Michael Gove and Grant Shapps led the charge against the dropping of the 45p rate. And the talk of the conference is, will Liz Truss's bold economic plan be further unpicked by disgruntled Tory MPs?
Do you worry this could be the beginning of the end for the great Liz Truss experiment?
Well, let's look at some of the things that they've got to do. There's going to need to be spending restraint. That's one of the key things that was missing from
Tory MPs might say no to that.
Grant Shapps and Michael Gove might well say no to that. There needs to be deregulation, planning reform. That seems to be a central
They might say no to that?
They might say no to that.
It could be over, the Trussonomics experiment, before it's even really begun.
This is a terribly inauspicious start.
Will Conservative MPs now let Liz Truss have free rein with all the other things she wants to do? Because some people think they'll be chasing her, hemming her in, tying her hands.
I don't think so. Which Conservative, you will not find a Conservative MP here who does not support growth in our economy.
The government's still under pressure from the city to bring forward the independent forecast by the Office for Budget Responsibility, and its treatment of the OBR, the Bank of England and the Treasury is being watched closely.
Would you accept the markets were unnerved by the way you treated those institutions and you need to treat them differently?
Well, I think markets move around. I think it's very clear...
You don't accept that?
I think it's very clear the Chancellor and Prime Minister do respect those institutions. They've been meeting...
I don't think it's very clear at all to the city. That was one of the things that was conveyed to the Chancellor in the room by people from the city, wasn't it?
I think the Chancellor has been meeting frequently with the Governor, I think 2 or 3 times a week. He and the Prime Minister met the OBR last Friday. We're going to have a full OBR forecast published on November the 23rd.
You're quite sure that won't happen earlier? clear. That won't be another U-turn.
So there is very
Quite sure?
There is very clear support.
It's a long time to wait.
There is very clear support for those institutions.
This time yesterday we had Michael Gove sitting here. What's he up to? Michael Gove used to be your colleague.
He's the one who... Oh, yeah, I've met him, yeah.
In neighbouring fringe events, the government and its fiercest internal critic were playing nice for now.
Michael is one of the cleverest men in politics, a very amiable figure who loves the art of politics. He's the sort of Tory party's version of Peter Mandelson.
As for being compared to Peter Mandelson, that's one of the nicest things that anyone has ever said about him in politics.
Several Tory MPs say they'll now operate a veto on the growth plan devised by Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng.
Do you think you're good at your job?
I think it's a real challenge and an honour. It's a challenge, but it's a real honour to serve in this job.
Do you think the Prime Minister thinks you're good at this job?
And I'm very, very focused on delivering on the growth plan that the Prime Minister and I have worked on.
Her brand new administration now overshadowed by mistakes. Their inaugural conference messed up like few before it. They declared the budget the start of a new era, and many here wonder how it can end well.
Well, the financial markets responded positively at first to the government's U-turn, with the pound rising against the dollar. Our economist Neil MacDonald is with me now. So, is the Chancellor in the clear?
Well, I think he'll certainly be a lot happier with the reaction he saw today on the financial markets compared to what he woke up to about a week ago, when, of course, the pound fell to the lowest level against the dollar it's ever been. And this has capped a bit of a turnaround for sterling. So if you look at pound against the dollar a few weeks before the mini-budget, it was around about $1.14. Then it plummeted, but it has staged a recovery in recent days, and currently it's around about the level it was before the mini-budget ever happened. The question, of course, is whatever the political hangover, does this mean that the economics are at least in the right place? Two big changes. One is the Bank of England came in last week and made a very big intervention in financial markets, and I think that has lifted the immediate sense of a possible economic crisis. And secondly, many investors have for days simply assumed that the government is not going to be able to go through with its plan for tax cuts based on hopes of economic growth, that they'll have to come up with a more conventional way of balancing the books.
So what does the government have to do now on tax and spend?
Well, the issue that remains unresolved in all this is how much is the government planning to borrow over the next 5 years. We still don't have an official forecast for that. The Institute for Fiscal Studies reckons it's going to be tens of billions of pounds a year more every year. It's worth bearing in mind that getting rid of this 45p rate commitment, cutting the 45p rate, saves the government about £2 billion a year, so it's essentially not going to make much difference. That's why the focus switches to government spending. The problem there is the Treasury's already made a promise to not cut the totals for health and defence and education and other departments. If that promise sticks, then that's why attention then switches to benefits and welfare.
And what does today's U-turn mean for equality?
Well, the government did face quite a lot of criticism for planning to cut the 45p rate because, of course, high earners were the beneficiaries of that. The Resolution Foundation is arguing that there's still a very big difference in the impact of the remaining tax cuts on income tax and national insurance, depending on where you are in the income spread. So they reckon that for the top 5% of households, the average annual benefit is around £3,500 a year. For people in the bottom 20%, it's about £90 a year. And the reason for that difference is, of course, when you're in the bottom 20% of incomes, you probably don't pay much income tax or national insurance. The thing that does matter a lot to you, of course, is the level of benefits.
Neil MacDonald, thank you very much. Well, earlier today, I spoke to the Business Secretary, Jacob Rees-Mogg. The last time we spoke, it was just after Boris Johnson had been dispatched, and you were telling me what a bad Chancellor Rishi Sunak was. Would you like to reconsider?
No.
Well, he didn't crash the economy, he didn't send mortgage rates spiralling, he didn't crash the pound, and he predicted this would happen.
Well, what happened with the pound is to do with the differential in interest rates in the UK against the US. And the Federal Reserve has raised interest rates faster than not just the
mortgage
UK,
rates are now at 6%
but a lot of
years.
other countries. And that has led to a devaluation of currencies against the dollar. If you look at the 30-year rate on UK gilts against US Treasuries, it is at an historically normal premium. That is what you would expect.
And it jumped after the fiscal event.
Well, actually, I think...
So the Chancellor's statement sent mortgage rates to where they are now.
I think much more important was the Bank of England's decision on the Thursday, prior to the statement, not to raise interest rates.
Well, that's a minority view, but fine.
We're here to discuss views, that seems the point. But actually, what is the determinant of currencies is interest rate differentials.
So are you saying this Chancellor, who's just had to scrap one of his key pillars, which 24 hours before they were all defending, is a good Chancellor?
Yes.
You've lost all credibility, haven't you?
No.
I mean, you lost credibility with the markets last week.
No.
You've lost credibility with the voters, just look at the opinion polls. And you're fast losing credibility with your own party.
I don't think any of the above is true. The markets react as markets do. That is what markets are for. But if you look at sterling and you look at the euro against the dollar, they have been declining. And that's because of the interest rate differential. The markets were certainly surprised that the independent Bank of England did not put up interest rates as much as the Federal Reserve had the day before.
This was also about market confidence. It wasn't just about differentials in interest rates.
I think if you talk about what the Chancellor has done, the really important removal of the national insurance increase, which was damaging to business and damaging to individuals, the removal of the increase in corporation tax, which was discouraging people from investing in the UK.
I know, but we talked about that all week. Let's talk about the catastrophe that happened last night, which was the reversal of the policy after the economic mess that it had led to. Were you consulted?
Once again, I'm going to say that you're overstating things. That it's not a catastrophe. A catastrophe is when there's an earthquake and thousands of people lose their homes.
Well, I think you're underestimating the impact economically on people's lives of mortgage rates going up.
I'm trying to discuss this in a calm and rational way, rather than exaggerated overstatement around the subject.
If you're looking at hundreds of pounds on your mortgage next year, that's a catastrophe for lots of people.
Mortgage rates have been rising all year because we have an inflationary problem. Now, Andy Haldane, very distinguished former chief economist at the Bank of England, forecast 15 months ago that inflation was a problem, and too few people took any notice of him.
People are looking at, massively increased bills next year that many of them can't afford.
Well,
and what are you going to do to help them?
What we have done, because there are various components of what's happening with the cost of living, is we've made the most enormous intervention to allow people to pay their energy bills.
Yeah, but the bills are still going up. They're just not going up by as much.
That's absolutely right. The government cannot set prices. Governments tried price and incomes policies in the 1970s, and they made inflation worse, and they made the economic downturn deeper. What we are doing is helping people meet the extraordinary increase in energy prices, whilst accepting that there will be an element of increase, except for those on benefits.
Was it the right thing to do, to scrap the 45p
It was the inevitable thing to do. Politicians have to deal with political realities.
But was it the right thing? If they had rung you last night at midnight and said, we're thinking of scrapping this policy, is that the right thing to do? What would you say?
Dealing with political realities is the right thing to do. It's the only choice that politicians have. But the important thing is that the cut in corporation tax, the cut in national insurance, and the supply side reforms that will make the economy grow are all coming through.
Nadine Dorries, with whom you were very closely allied, and who supported Liz Truss with you, is now calling for an election and saying Liz Truss is getting things wrong. Do you still agree with her?
Nadine is marvellous, and I used to sit in the cabinet next to Nadine, and she is an influence for good within the Conservative Party and brilliantly forthright in her views. I think this is a very interesting academic debate about constitutional evolution, which I think we've touched on. Well, I was
a new Prime Minister would have to have an election.
I was saying that there was an evolution within the Constitution. As I've said before, that evolution isn't complete. It was something that was interrupted by the Fixed-Term Parliament Act. But at the moment, the Prime Minister has a majority in the House of Commons. That is our constitutional position. It hasn't evolved in the way that I expected it to, and therefore it is quite right that the Prime Minister carries on.
Would you rather have Boris Johnson or Liz Truss right now running the country?
I was a great supporter of Boris Johnson, but he lost the leadership, and I'm supporting Liz Truss.
Would you like Boris Johnson back?
No.
Why not?
Well, because we now have a leader. I don't want to change leaders often as people change their suit. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. We have a leader, we have a good leader, a strong leader, a clear leader, who I think will be a great leader.
But lots of people are talking about getting rid of Liz Truss, aren't they?
No,
in this
no.
conference.
A few gossipy people.
Last night in the bars.
You shouldn't talk to Michael Gove so much.
Maybe you should talk to him more.
He's a great man. He's most entertaining.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So, how has all this been going down with voters? Our policy correspondent, Paul McNamara, has been trying to find out.
It's just gone 8 o'clock. It's time to get the latest news headlines across the West Midlands.
The government will not scrap the top rate of income tax for the highest earners in an astonishing U-turn. In a tweet...
Welcome to West Bromwich East. Labour for 45 years until Boris and Brexit and the collapse of the Red Wall. But times have changed. Policy has changed overnight and minds are changing here too.
We're asking people what they think of Liz Truss. Have you seen the U-turn this morning? On the
Yes, completely. She's gone completely back the way. I'm right, and now she's decided, no, it's not right. But has she taken the blame? I don't think so. I think she's passed it on to the Chancellor.
Oh, look at all this, what she's doing. Now she's U-turned on the 45p tax, isn't it? Yeah. So, what a start. You know, she's saying I'm doing this and doing it for the poor. She's not, it's all for the rich, isn't it?
Everything is just new to them. As you can see, she's not really that comfortable in the job as yet. Give her some time, let she get more, well, there's a word for it, more confident in herself.
Government's just done the U-turn. How do you feel about it?
It shouldn't have happened in the first place. And Ayer's going to be the shortest serving Prime Minister, I think. Because,
do you think this is her done for?
Eh?
Do you think this
is
her done for?
There in the first place. Is it? Bring Boris back, that's what I say. I've voted Labour all my life until Jeremy Corbyn took over. But I'm about Tory now more.
And if they brought Boris back?
Might be, I know he's a bit of an idiot, but we all make mistakes, don't we?
What happens at the next election here, though, will depend on what happens here. And inside the Conservative conference, Red Wall MPs walk a tightrope strung between pillars of party unity and voter angst.
The means in Stoke-on-Trent, the average household's not just getting £1,000 from the energy price cap, but they're going to get the 400 from the household bills. And 94% of properties, very important, Paul, are band A to D. That's another £150. And the ceramics business emailed me directly to say that they're going to save £4.8 million off their gas bill, which means 500 jobs directly protected and thousands in the supply chain protected as well.
Isn't this a question of competency? And right now, your government doesn't look all that competent.
No, the Prime Minister is showing that she's delivering for the British people.
It's all about owning up, fessing up, and if you made a mistake, then put it right. That's the manly thing to do, isn't it?
Or womanly thing to do.
Or womanly thing to do, yeah. It's the right thing to do. So, yeah, I'm glad it's nipped in bud. So you lot now can go and get a proper job and stop bothering people like me.
Has this made it easier or harder for you come the next election?
I don't know. The next election is about 2 years away, so I'm not a fortune teller. They can pay the gas bills, pay the energy bills, they've got jobs, they've got good hospitals, they've got good health care, and they trust us, and we should be okay.
Labour voters lent their vote to you last time round. They can do the same next time?
Of course they can, yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of democracy, isn't it? If they're not happy, they can sack us.
And do you think they will now?
Well, that's up to the electorate.
Well, within 2 years, the electorate will decide.
We're asking people what they make of Liz Truss.
Who's Liz Truss?
The Prime Minister.
I got a clue.
Fair enough.
Don't listen to politics.
A key issue next time might not be tax, but apathy.
Well, joining me now is the former Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, and we are getting news of what could be another U-turn, which is the government's publishing of the OBR forecasts, which is not due until the end of November, but we're hearing that they're going to bring it forward now to this month sometime.
I really hope that's the case. I was this lunchtime and today following the reversal on the 45p saying the next most important thing is to publish that information. That's the Office of Budget Responsibility. For people not familiar with the OBR, the important thing is that they give you an overview of where government budgets will be, where the money will be. And I think that's really important because every other question flows from that. So bringing that forward, something I've been asking for. If that's going to happen now, that's very welcome.
But where is this government now if you and Michael Gove can effectively get them to do a U-turn last night and then maybe another one today? I mean, they've lost their authority. they are, in office but not in power.
Look, I think charitable interpretation, I think this is the right one, is they delivered this non-budget, this mini-budget very, very quickly. They made some errors in the calculations, the way they did that, the 45p, very obvious one. But also trying to do it without giving full transparency. I think it's very important that the OBR do get their say. Why? Because actually it's having an independent body able to judge the homework, but to mark the homework, as it were, without which the markets take fright.
But have they made sort of political, really deep mistakes by having you and Michael Gove outside the tent?
Yes, it's a
not
mistake.
Saying what you're doing from outside the
I was
tent,
going to say.
I
was going to say the easier question is: was it a mistake not to publish OBR information and have them look at it? Yes. To do things like 45p? Yes. They were doing a bunch of other very good stuff. Very, very warmly support the energy package, which is really important. So they've made mistakes. They've acknowledged those mistakes. I think it would be churlish not to now say that's a good thing, and I'm very pleased to see those reversals take place.
But this is not strong government, is it?
Look, it's been a bumpy start. I don't think anyone could. Why would anyone say anything else? Actually, even I think Kwasi today said it's been a tough day, and the Prime Minister's conceded the same. There's no point pretending it's not difficult when it is, but it is important to put these things right. I call for it. They've done it. I should congratulate them.
So what's next? I mean, Benefits is the one that's really exercising a lot of the One Nation group, Damien Green and others, saying, they must raise benefits by inflation.
Yeah. I think it's really important that, having gone down that route of suggesting that they would reduce 45p tax to 40p for the better off, that actually they go out their way now to show that what this government is really about, what drives it, which is absolutely right, given the massive support for helping families and businesses with energy, is helping people who are also some of the hardest up in society. So when you come to the welfare or the benefit side. Now, before I pass judgment on exactly what they should be doing there, let's see the numbers. Let's see those figures. That's why the OBR is so important to all of this. I know that the government is going to receive that information, or becomes available from the OBR this Friday. Previously, they weren't going to publish that till the end of November. Bringing that forward, if that's what we're hearing this evening, is exactly the right thing to do. It will enable us to look at the welfare side and say, actually, this is the amount we've now got to play with.
I mean, you're saying this is not good, but I mean, you're being charitable there, aren't you? I mean, this is chaos.
I'm a charitable guy.
And the people, people here and in the bars, they're talking about this. This can't go on for 2 years. I mean, do you think she can survive? Does she need to be replaced? I've heard your name being bandied around as a possible compromise candidate.
Well, that's very kind. Right now, though, we're only a few weeks on from a leadership election. One of the things I think Liz was right about in the election, but possibly wrong about afterwards, was bringing the party together, making it collegiate. I think it's a really important thing to pursue still, because as with any political party, and the Conservative Party has always been this very broad, church, I think it's important to have people from all different parts of the party involved. Because it has to be a project for everybody.
Oh, what? So do you think she should invite more people back in? I mean, would you go in if she asked you to come in?
I don't think there's any chance of an invitation right now. She's just formed the government. I actually genuinely think we need to give her the opportunity to deliver on what she wants to do. And just
but if Kwasi Kwarteng has to go, and it's perfectly reasonable, it's a perfectly reasonable scenario. You might have to resign. There could be a major reshuffle.
Yeah. No, I don't accept that just because he introduced a measure, the 45p thing in this case, that actually has been shown to be unpopular, actually the wrong move at the wrong time. Not because I don't believe in lower taxes. I want to see lower taxes, because no case was made for it in advance, and the timing couldn't be worse. But just because of that, I don't think that then leads to, and therefore we need to throw that Chancellor over the edge. Actually, he's got a job to do. I support him in doing that. I think Liz Truss, who said she wants to create a government of all the talents, should get on with doing that kind of thing. I think she said now, actually, communication could be a lot better. I think she should get on improving communication. I think we should give her an opportunity to do those things.
Grant Shapps, thank you very much.
Thank you.